Welcome to The Sage and The Skeptic, a podcast for those ready to go beyond ego, pride, attachments, and their versions. And here we dive into transformative conversations that challenge the patterns of the past, freeing you to shape a future on your terms. I'm your host, Andrew Keating, The Skeptic, asking the tough questions but keeping it grounded. And joining me as always is the wise and insightful Manu Abraham, our sage, guiding us with her profound perspective. Together, we explore what it truly means to look beyond ourselves. Hi, Manu, and welcome back for our new revised Sage and Skeptic podcast. It's so good to be doing this again and good to be having these conversations and sharing with people. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you, Andy.
Yeah, awesome. And first of all, I just want to say a massive sort of congratulations on the year that you've had. We were counting earlier on that I think by the end of this year, you'll have done 27, 28 flights
Yeah.
over, and covered over 100,000 kilometers, which is just
Mm.
incredible in itself. I forget how many countries you've been to, and especially overseas, you've been to LA and San Francisco and Wisconsin running events and being at events and that kind of thing. So it's amazing the year you've had and the trainings and stuff that you've done. So it's been amazing for me to watch and amazing for me to see and to be part of. And I'm very proud of being part of that as well. So because of the people that we've been working with, or you've been working with, and the trainings that you've done, you've worked with people who some are in desperate need of overcoming traumatic experiences, and they're really stuck in their lives and moving forward because that past is dictating their future still. And also, you've worked with some super successful people uh, who also are stuck in their lives. And I guess that what I'm keen to discuss today is that second group at this stage, the people who are super successful and the people who look to have it all in their lives. And I'm really curious to know is what do they come to you with? What do they come for help with? Because to the outside world, they seem to have got it all. So I'm curious to know the people that you've worked with like that and the commonalities maybe that they've come to you.
Yeah. So I think we differentiate super successful and not so successful people. But interestingly, mind functions very similar in kind of any kind of achievement. It doesn't matter. So mind is very similar, and mostly super successful people, the successful they are, you can imagine the drive that they had behind to propel them, right? It's really the drive behind that really propels them. And the drive, quite often, it stems from almost all individuals, I can say, that the drive really stems from a strong running away from a specific situation or an identity. And the super successful people, because naturally, because of their success and because of their drive, naturally, they are leader materials. And they are leader materials because when situations are not in their favor, the only option that they had is to climb up and never to go down. So there is no other option. There is no option to go for support somewhere else or seek something or be a mediocre. That there is no option. You have to win. So that winning is the only survival mode. And that naturally makes people successful and they are leaders. However, what is important is to understand that the super successful people, because of the drive they have got, it it masks every other emotion. It masks every other experience, and the body plays a major role in the drive. So the body can push you so far as your mind is willing to push, and there comes a point when the mind cannot push, and that's when the super successful people starts feeling stuck. And I think that's the precise point they seek or they reach out, if they're ready to reach out, because the polarity of the mind, the independent person believes that he or she is also independent in every situation, every circumstance, and the ego becomes a barrier to reach out for help. When the drive of the trauma is done, that's when the drive of the person has to come to the surface, but they never paused for a moment to reflect What do I want? It's the trauma that is driving them. One of my clients, so his drive was that he has to be a protector of his mom. That's his drive from whatever traumatic experiences that he experienced to raise her standards from poverty. And that has been his goal, and that was his drive. And that drove him. And now, when that mom, for whose validation that young boy has been working all these years, and when he lost his mom, then what does he want then? So that is gone. So to whom will he prove? This is one of the case studies. So successful people, when the trauma stops driving them, that's when they feel stuck. That feeling stuck cannot be pushed by motivating them or giving them another goal. It is about truly going and resolving what is stopping them.
Interesting. So let's say you have two people, who go through the same traumatic experience or experiences as they grow up. What's the difference that drives somebody from, going into addictions and despair to being driven to be something? Is it just that running away from something, or I'll never be something? Or is there something else at play? How can two people experience something and have two completely different reactions to that?
Yeah, it's like the story that one son who sees his dad beating up his mom. So, twins, one son decides he should be exactly like his dad, and he grows up to be a man who will abuse his wife. And there is other son of the twins, he decides, I will not be like my dad, and he will respect his wife. So I think it's mostly the choices, and also we come from with our own level of DNAs and cellular memories, ancestral and generational memories, because we are not just carriers of memories of this lifetime. Those memories plus the choices that we make in this lifetime. When you feel powerless, when you feel helpless, so what's the strength of your character? So in making those choices, the person who wants to win, climb up and still be a good person, and the person who feels powerless and desperate and who sinks under the weight of the experience, I think it's primarily the inner strength. That courage, that inner strength guides them, and that's the key thing that makes a big difference in people's lives. So seeing that, when you come across a person who is stuck because of a traumatic experience or a midlife crisis or any other transitions, identity transitions of life, the person with inner strength, the moment they get some help and they get the clarity, it's easier for them to rise up and then rebuild their lives again. But the challenge with leaders and successful people is how long will they wait to get that, because they're quick to bounce back, but they're slow to actually reach out. So the real strategy is in being quick to reach out because they're quick to bounce back. So that's the real quality of a leader, a successful person. They're quick to bounce back. But because with the leaders and successful people, as I said, the ego is costly enough that it prevents them from actually reaching out before sinking in.
So what's actually, there's a couple of things here, a couple of questions that I just have is, when you talked about the two brothers, for example, who witnessed maybe the parents' domestic violence or situation, why would one child decide to be like the perpetrator? And why, I can understand myself why one would not want to be that, but certainly for one thing, why would they want to be? What are they getting from being like that perpetrator? So just that question first.
So it's because if you look at the ego hamster wheel I talk about in what I teach and what I explain, one of the reasons is one of the things that the mind does is meaning. So what is really important is the meaning we make of every action. So of the two brothers I'm talking about, for one brother, being powerful is the physical control, perhaps. Being powerful is aggression. Being powerful is anger. Being powerful is that. But that's the meaning one brother must have taken. And for other brother, silence is power. For other brother, patience is power. So inaction is power. And if you dial it down and look at it, again, the three innate qualities we talk about. So, a person who is more an element of air and who has got this high energy, and they can come across impulsive, they can be quick to respond, quick to act, they can make meaning so quick that meaning can define their life, because the meaning they make becomes their choice, and the choices they make become their decisions, and the decisions become the beliefs, because it's you're feeding yourself the meaning over and over. That becomes your belief, and your beliefs become your behaviors, your environment. So that meaning, at what situation did you choose to make that meaning, and how often did you go and access that meaning, the memory of that meaning, to feel something about yourself? So, a person who felt powerless must have accessed the meaning they made out of being an abusive parent, and that's some form of power. And the other way to do that is also when they are inherently they are meek or they are weak or powerless, then they have to fake the power, and that is where the bullying or dominant people or the controlling people, so the people who are controlling, who are dominating, who are bullying, are actually masking their weakness and not the strength, in fact. So it is quite tricky to understand each person, how did they make the meaning and what situations provoke them. So just because a person is dominant or showing such behaviors does not mean they are bad. It's the situations and the meanings they made out of that. And that's what we have to really understand. So, this is all in a way stemming from that basic need of not being seen, heard, or understood, or not wanting to follow the status quo or questioning the status quo. So, that helped them in some form. Like, say, if somebody is coming from a conservative family or a dysfunctional family, the only way they can be heard is by breaking the rules. And if that pattern helped them to win, if that pattern helped them to rise up and stand up for themselves, then you will continue the pattern. Why not? We all do that. The patterns that worked for us, we take it into every aspect of our life. But the point is, the mind is so tricky, these identities are so tricky, that the mind does not see that situation has changed. So the idea of dominance and the idea of telling people, or the idea of aggression, which worked then, is not the tool that will necessarily work after a point. So these are the things the successful people experience, but we dismiss it. That's not so important, because the trauma drives the leaders, and in the drive they have very little time to observe these triggers. If the trauma is driving you, we somehow failed as a community to address those situations and experiences for leaders and successful people.
So it's really on a knife edge, isn't it, of which way you could go. If you like to say, you could go into falling into negative behaviors, or societal behaviors, like addictions and things like that, or you can be propelled into that. And it really is a knife edge of which you fall. And from what you're saying, just a simple decision that you make around an event that does that. And that's really interesting. What I'm curious about then is, whenever you've got a leader, and I'm sure whether they're a dominant leader, or whether they're an inspiring leader, or whether they're a leader that is someone who brings a team along with them or drags a team along, what stops them reaching out for help? At what point do they reach out to you?
So it is lonely at the top, Andy. It is really lonely at the top. When it is lonely at the top, leaders, because of their natural skill set, as much as these challenges are there and triggers are there, but also a huge part of them is also an intelligent mind. A huge part of them is a logical, intelligent, successful mind, an independent mind, a powerful engines that they are holding. So at that point, when they reach, it is interesting that even people in an identity transitions, when they're evolving, the same friend circle does not mean anything to them. The same family that they're born and brought up, they lose interest in it. But a common man cannot understand that. They think that you can actually inspire or make a change by being an equal. That is one of the leadership styles. It works in such situations. But to really make an impact, a leader to take effective decisions, to move forward, they are lonely. They're lonely at the top because very few people can really understand a leader, because you standing in a common man's shoes or an employee's shoes, you cannot understand the mind or the idea of a leader. Because they're lonely at the top, they cannot hold a conversation if it is not an intellectual conversation for them. So it's almost like they have these sensors very strong, that they can smell it, they can sense it. So unless they feel equally held in a space, unless they feel equally challenged in their ideologies, and thoughts, it's hard for them to give in. So it is important for those people lonely at the top to create a space where they can actually give in and allow that emotional intelligence to kick in. But in order to make that happen, who is there to hold the space? I worked in organizations where we were on the board and each leader is ready to criticize the other because of their trauma driven leadership, because of their experiences that brought them into this leadership. They still hold them to competitiveness. They still hold them to compete with each other on the right or wrong level. So in this scenario, in this space, nobody wants to put they keep their cards very close to their chest because they're competing still at a leadership level. So they all are lonely in their space. But now imagine these leaders who are sitting in these boats, they're free from their own baggages. They're free from the fear of being poor again. They're free from the idea of validation from my mom because I'm the protector, I'm the son, I'm the provider. They're free from the idea that I will not be poor again like how I used to be, or how my parents and could not afford these things for me. Imagine these free minds sitting in this boardroom, the leaders, free from these past baggages, what an impact they can make.
So I'm sort of curious here, because are you saying that only a leader or somebody who's been in that space can help another leader? You know, I'm not talking mentorship here. So I know that you had a very successful corporate career, and was CFO of many different companies. Would they only be able to submit and be vulnerable to somebody who they feel is on the same level or has been on the same level as them?
They are searching, they are on the lookout for people who can really understand their challenges. A NASA scientist with a rocket science example, some question out there, probably a common man may not be able to address it, and you need another physicist or another scientist to address, to understand the challenge, to actually provide a solution. So they need a mind that is well equipped to understand their challenges objectively. So can you now imagine a coach of a middle management coming to coach a leader? They cannot understand the challenges because they do not have the balcony view of what is happening as an organization. So you need a person who understands the challenges, a person who can be as objective as the leader and still induce the idea of empathy and emotional intelligence, and not the other way around.
That's really interesting. So let's say that then obviously somebody comes and reaches out to you. You said it's hard, it's low. They don't reach out because they're lonely, but they get to that point where they know something needs to change. They know that somehow they don't feel that passion anymore for what they're doing, or that drive to do that. What would you put in place, or what are the commonalities that you see that you can put in place for somebody?
One of the meanings, or one of the definitions that are quite important to people in leadership and successful people, are the definitions of success itself. Definition of being rich, definition of being influential, definition of being inspiring, definition of being successful. So these are all the definitions that they live by because they are the definitions of the past, the identities of the past that are leading them. Now imagine a leader who lost interest in the product that they have been working on, or in the organization that they chose to live their life the last 20, 30 years. And suddenly that interest is gone. And when that interest is gone, no amount of motivation or pushing them or giving them different strategies will help. I think there is a point in life for everybody to truly ask themselves, what do I want now? Really, what do I want? So, at any point of time, if you're feeling stuck or if you're losing interest or motivation in what you're doing, go back to the basics and truly ask, like, what do I want now? So recently, I was talking to this gentleman again who is quite successful, who is an entrepreneur. And so, and all he came to me was his question was, I just want to be happy. And I said, okay, so what is stopping you to be happy? And he says, no, I just want to be happy. Right. So, what does happiness look like to you? And he said, it's just sitting by the dam and drinking a bottle of beer, not thinking about anything else. Are you not doing that now? Oh, actually, I'm doing it now. So, what's not making you happy? So, the definition of his happiness is just to sit and have a drink, not thinking about anything, has been his idea of happiness, which he's already doing, but still he's not happy. And when we went into a further conversation, and it realized that at the age of 17, he left his home and he left his family behind, and he wanted to be independent. He wanted to be successful. That 17-year-old child who took a decision to leave behind the family, leave behind everything, and today, quite successful, does not have to work anymore. He is happy with what he is doing and quite financially independent, financially rich, family wise rich with children, grandchildren, can travel anywhere in the world. But however, the identity forgot to realize that the 17-year-old is not the 17-year-old kid anymore who is aspiring to somehow make his life.
So,
What he
so,
had.
so is what you're saying there that that decision as a 17-year-old that I'm leaving the family, I have to be successful, that's still driving him today. So he
Yeah,
can't see the success that he's got the same way
yeah,
because that 17-year-old is still striving. He's never told that 17-year-old, hey, good job, we've done it.
yeah,
Is that
yeah. And that's how the success and leadership comes in, because they never pause to acknowledge what they have achieved. They never pause to say, right, good job. And now a new goal. Let us start something new today based on what we want today. So, irrespective of all of these things, he cannot be mentally available for family or children or grandchildren because the 17-year-old is still running to be independent. But it's the 17-year-old dream, that identity is driving you. So if somebody is stuck, it's not necessarily because you are a failure or you haven't achieved. Quite often, the opposite, that you did not stop to realize or understand that identity that took the decision has met its job, purpose. And it's now time for you to let go of that identity and take on this new identity. Whoever you are today, that is what I would work on when somebody is reaching out, especially with successful leadership roles.
so? I guess it's really important then for somebody who's a leader or somebody who's an aspiring leader is first to find the right person to work with,
Yeah,
someone who can work in that way that's going to work for them.
yeah,
And would you also say for somebody who, again, is an aspiring leader who's looking at moving up that corporate ladder, so to speak, it's important for them to resolve anything in their past, anything that they may have gone through that which may not be, hugely traumatic as what we often think there, but it's important for them to do that, for them to be better at what they do when they rise up. I always remember somebody telling me or hearing somewhere that people get promoted to the point where they become useless. So
yeah,
is it important that people who are aspiring find that mentorship, find and resolve these things in themselves to become better? Will that help propel them? Or, do they wait till they get there and then find, okay, now I'm struggling with this, and find someone who's a mentor that can help them with that?
yeah. It's a chicken and an egg, because as you said, they get promoted to the point of being useless, and then they can play the template of contentment, and they can play the template of look what I have achieved, and they can get stuck there and they don't go further. But also at that point, the another episode of trauma can begin about being relevant, being wanted by people, being needed by people, but not actually progressing from that point. So this continuous growth should be on everybody's agenda. Like we have to continuously choose to evolve and grow at that point.
We've talked now about a lot of corporate, and I'd just like to touch on for a moment. So, for example, people in like non-for-profit and that maybe have gone through something or the loss of something, and it's driven them to build an empire in helping people so they don't suffer like they did or other people don't have to go through what they did. What are their challenges when it comes to something like this? Because that drive that they had have had such huge positive impact on the world that I guess it's done some good.
Quite often, if you look at life in a bigger picture, your suffering is a beacon of light for others. So, because in true sense, there is no suffering. In true sense, it is lack of skill, lack of strategy, lack of help, lack of resourcefulness. So, these are all the reasons which we call suffering as a symptom. So, your so called quote suffering is a beacon of light for others. So, the person who moved first can always show the path to the people behind. But if you get stuck in that rescuer identity of showing the path for others and you're just standing there to hold the light for someone, you forget your evolution. So it's always important as a leader for you to be at least one step ahead of the people whom you're leading. So, whether not profit or off profit, it is important that self realization, that personal evolution is very important to be a real beacon of light. So, quite often, when people are stuck in this rescuer mode or giving mode, they can make huge impact to the society, but their life is a mess. And most leaders, especially these giving leaders, rescuer leaders, community leaders, their personal life is in a mess, and that they overcompensate by giving to the community. And but you call it a sacrifice? Do you call it selflessness? No, it's inability, helplessness, powerless, that you can't really clean your home and you go and you suffer here personally. So if you're avoiding your pain and making an impact in the world, then there is a lot for you to evolve personally. And if your identity is not defined by this personal chaos, then you're in a good position, good space. Go and make the change in the world and be that beacon of light for many, because family is what you create, family is what you choose, not what you're born into.
Fantastic. So, if there's somebody listening to this or watching this right now who got resonated by something what you said and go, yeah, that's me, what would you recommend that they do to get the help that they're looking for?
Reach out and have that chat, have that conversation, be open.
And if they're feeling that their ego is in the way of finding help,
I think to all the leaders and successful people, irrespective of your titles, my question to you would be how costly is your ego and how much you want to be driven by motivation and how much you want to be driven by the duality of your life, that a mask within and a mask to the external world. Are you truly in alignment? So if you can just question this and then ask, what do I really want? Who am I when nobody is watching me?
thank you, Mana, and thank you for, again, insightful conversation and a lot of realizations. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.